Welcome to Accessing Life, a podcast focused on empowering people with developmental disabilities to live their best life. On this episode, she's officially the leader of OPWDD. Chester and BJ chat with newly sworn-in Commissioner Willow Baer about the future for the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities and how your voice plays a huge part.
And it's my pleasure to introduce our guest, Willow Baer, who's our new commissioner. Hi, Willow.
Hi, Chester. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes. And also my co-host, BJ Stachio. BJ?
Hello, Willow. Nice to see you again.
Hi, BJ. I can't keep you away.
I know. Glad you finally got that acting taken off the beginning of your title. Glad you're commissioner now.
Oh, thank you. Me too. It makes it much easier to introduce myself.
Speaking of introducing yourself, you want to tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are now?
Sure. So my career in public service started at the county level. I am an attorney by trade. So I spent several years as a county attorney focused on child welfare, child abuse, neglect, and foster care mostly. Moved from there to the New York State Justice Center the year that they opened, came over to OPWDD and worked in our service bureau within counsel's office. So did service authorization, provider compliance work, Medicaid fair hearings, civil rights, sort of that side of OPWDD. Was there for a few years, moved up to deputy counsel and then general counsel for the agency. I did end up leaving the agency for a couple of years to work for Kathy Hochul as assistant counsel to the governor and for 1 year at the Office of Children and Family Services as their general counsel, and then came back almost 2 years ago here. So I've made my way around the state, came back as executive deputy commissioner, and then stepped in as acting commissioner almost a year ago.
Great. All of those things that you have done now, what is some of the goals you have for OPW and moving them forward? I know being at OPW on Wednesday, for me, it'll be 27 years. So, seeing different commissioners, I'm excited to hear, what are your goals and what are your plans for OPW?
Well, Chester, you have been such a role model, and thank you for all that time here. I think every commissioner brings a little bit something different to the role of commissioner. Dave Lombardo asked me on his podcast last week what I wanted to be known for as commissioner, and I hadn't really thought about it, but the answer that came very naturally to me was one of advocacy. So I come to the system as someone, as a family member of someone with a developmental disability. And so I feel very connected to our self-advocates and our family advocates, and to the idea of making sure that self-advocates and family advocates are as involved as possible in making policy decisions and designing programs and making sure that the work of the agency really works for people, right? At the end of the day, we need to make sure that what we do positively impacts people's lives, that people can use the services, access the services, understand our communication, our messaging. And so to me, both as a family member and as sort of a former lawyer, that idea of advocacy is what I really want to put into action at the agency, and sort of how I would love to be remembered as a commissioner.
Oh, that's nice. One thing that I know I hear from families as well as some of the self-advocates, they said they feel comfortable, with you, and they can just feel it when you talk to them, and, they said you're like down to earth. So
Thank you. That is the biggest compliment.
yeah. So I'll turn it over to BJ. I'm sure, he has some great questions.
Oh,
Oh, good. My time to ask some questions now. And I promised you they were going to be nice and easy questions. I'll keep that promise to you. So, Willow, what do you think the role of self-advocates will be in your time as commissioner? What would you like it to be?
Yeah, I think that it will be what I've already made it and will continue to grow. So, one of probably the very first thing I did when I took over as acting commissioner was hired additional peer specialists, so self-advocates who work for OPWDD to act as advisors to me and to the agency. I don't know how we do the work that we do without that voice. So that's been really transformational. I know to our leadership team to have more self-advocates participate in the day-to-day work. So to me, that's at the core of everything we do, and I expect that will continue to grow.
Yeah, I agree. And when we were thinking about the questions to ask you, one of the questions that popped in the group's head was about civil rights, the rights book, etc. How important is it to you that people understand their rights and know how to make the system work for them?
I mean, it's everything, right, BJ? It's the core. It's the core of what we do. We are a civil rights movement in the disability space, and at the core of that is what people should have the right to and have access to. In New York State, we led the closure of institutionalizations with Willowbrook. We in New York, just under Kathleen Hochul recently, right, hired the chief disability officer to make sure that we're compliant with the ADA. We voluntarily agreed that as a state, we needed to look at our Olmstead planning again and reissue that updated. And New York really leads the way in terms of civil rights, and it's not any different here at OPWDD. It really is the core of everything that we do. I love the Know Your Rights booklet that you guys put together that we're launching officially when we celebrate the ADA next month. So yeah, it is, as a lawyer and as a New Yorker and as a human being, right? Civil rights is at the very core of what we do and super important to me that we continue to focus on.
And sometimes people who receive services and have IDD, and I know families feel this way too, think their voice really doesn't resonate with OPWDD administration. What would you say to that? Because I've had many people say that to me, and I know Chester has heard the same thing sometimes.
Yeah, I think I would, first of all, I would validate that I understand why it could feel that way, right? Government is big, and a single self-advocate or family voice can feel very drowned out. But I would also reassure folks that that's not true. And I take every opportunity to reiterate that. I mean, we have all kinds of opportunities for self-advocates and family advocates to advise and join meetings and reach out to me. I try to respond even just to every email and outreach that I get personally from families and advocates. I try to be responsive to. I know that the leadership team feels the same way, right? We aren't a system without self and family advocates. And so your voice absolutely does matter here and bigger than here, right? We see, while we think that potentially Medicaid is under attack from the federal government, that what changes legislators' minds are hearing directly from self-advocates and families about what that would mean to them. And so that voice is so important.
And what would you tell self-advocates about what's going on in the federal government and families too? Because that's been a heavy topic of conversations at many meetings I've been at. What would you tell everybody who's hearing that?
It sure has. It comes up at every meeting I'm at as well. I would say, I think sort of what I just said, right? That sharing your story and personalizing the importance of Medicaid and the service system and humanizing it is really the way that we invoke change. So people's voices are more important now than ever. I think also New York State is probably the only state I would want to live in right now. I think we can find a way to weather the storm, so to speak. But nothing has happened yet at the federal level to be completely responsive to. So I also don't want people to freak out too much, right? I've been trying to be reassuring to some degree that we are looking at the federal changes and paying attention. We don't want to lose any Medicaid services. And so we will work in New York State to figure it out. And I hope that people can remain calm and use their voice in some positive advocacy instead.
One of the questions I have, and I want to commend OPWDD as well as the governor's office on the, things that they're doing for direct support professionals in New York State and setting the example, for some of the initiatives that we've initiated. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit? I know that, the rest of the country is watching what we do, and we've done a lot that has inspired other states to follow our example.
Yeah, that's great that you hear that from other states, Chester. I do as well. We really in New York State, right? We've had a significant workforce crisis, just like everywhere, for a few years post-pandemic, and in the last couple of years have addressed that from a couple of different angles. So we have credentialing programs that we've implemented in partnership with SUNY and with some of our providers to provide credentialing classes and incentives to DSPs. And what that does is it makes DSPs better equipped to do their job. It makes them more engaged, and it makes them feel more like a professional that they are, right? It's not a job. I don't want to, there's nothing wrong, right, with working in a fast food restaurant or in retail, right? Those are absolutely important jobs as well, but it's sort of more than that. You're helping someone, it's a lot more than that. You're helping people day to day live their lives, join their communities, reach their goals, go to work, right? And that is such an important career, and we want DSPs to really recognize what an important career that is. So the idea behind some of that credentialing is really just to reiterate how important the professionalization is of being direct support staff. We also have worked with SUNY on tuition reimbursement so that DSPs can get higher education without it costing them any money. So that has been really successful over the last year in New York State. The credentialing that I mentioned is in partnership with the National Alliance on Direct Support Professionals, which is a national organization that can provide that credentialing program to any of the states and has done more work in New York State than with any other state. So we're really proud of that. We've also invested $4 billion in the last 4 years towards direct support wages. So that's COLAs and targeted inflationary increases and one-time bonuses. Right. So as much as it's a great job, it at the end of the day, you also have to pay your bills and take care of your family. And so really moving the needle towards a livable wage for direct support has been the primary goal in the workforce for the last couple of years here. So all of those things together with our marketing campaign, so that direct support are reminded, right, about how important the career path is, and people looking for jobs remember that it's a whole career out there. All of those things together have really worked together towards supporting the workforce over the last couple of years.
So, it's exciting, and it's also about changing the culture, changing from what you used to be to what you can look forward to, in the future. And, me, myself, I'm excited about that because I always tell people that it's more than just, a job, and it's about respect all the way around. So setting those type of examples, help us all the way around, help us as people receiving services, but also help them as workers.
Yeah, that's so important, Chester. And you said it so much more eloquently than I did.
Yeah. Willow, if you had an opportunity to look into your Willow crystal ball, what would you want the future of advocacy to look like in OPWDD in the future? What would you want the future to look like for advocacy in the system moving forward?
The future of advocacy. I mean, I think that we are building up the team of peer specialists, right? And mapping out a bigger picture of what advocacy looks like. We hired a director of advocacy who recently joined the agency. We have the statewide ombudsman program up and running where we're collecting data about the types of issues that come up over and over again so we can be sort of proactive about addressing those. So I don't know that I have a long-term big picture that's much different other than continuing to grow what we've started and learn from having all of those additional voices in the room to make sure that our system is as customer friendly and accessible as possible.
Hey, anything's a start. Don't worry about it. I just wanted to see what your answer would be, and that was a good one.
And I know you're interviewing me, but if you guys have thoughts on what you think advocacy could look like in the future, I would love to hear that as well.
Oh, yes. And, you know, we're thankful that finally it's come to a point where advocacy is recognized by OPW and that we can play an important role in what's happening. One of the questions I have, Willow, is I meet a lot of people and a lot of families out there that don't know about OPWDD and the services that we offer. Do you have any ideas of where you want to go with that next, how we can get the word out, you know, a little bit better than what we have been doing, you know, to let families and people that, you know, are out there that might be able to use services, but they really don't know. And they, you know, how we can do that better.
Yeah, I think that that's a really important question, and it really speaks to all the work that we've been doing to focus on equity and on making sure that all of our, not just our services, but how we reach people even before we get to a point of services is done in a way that's culturally responsive and available in multiple languages. And we have been really investing in data systems and how we collect and report data. So what that has enabled us to start to do is to see what communities within the disability community were maybe not reaching as well as we thought we were. So a lot of the work that we've done in the last couple years to offer front door materials in other languages, to engage in 507 strategic planning forums in other languages, and really strengthening our community-based partnerships with those community-based organizations and providers that specifically target some of those smaller cultural groups that maybe historically we have not done a great job of working with, I think is really, really important. And is changing the overall demographic of who we serve, and that is really it's been a long time coming, right? Historically, we've underserved groups of people, and so I think we've done a really good job of starting to meet some of those communities within the broader disability community. I'm excited about it.
Yes. And I think, you know, we overall are, you know, everyone is excited. Now for before, you know, we let you go, do you have any words for not only families and agencies out there, but do you have any words for people to let them know that, you know, you're, you know, excited about what's going to happen next? You know, because I think, you know, people, you know, are happy about the future and, you know, what it can bring. You know, we had all the, you know, sometimes people get negativity, but, you know, the more we can bring things down to a positive spin. Do you have any words for families and people that are out there just, you know, waiting on something good?
I was in Buffalo last week and I was asked how it was that I seemed so optimistic. Because I think we are going through a very difficult time in the world right now, and it's easy to feel very negative. And I was asked, why is it that I seem like I feel positive and optimistic? And I think for me, first of all, I have to, right? You have to be optimistic
Yeah.
and positive to do this work. But I think I am excited about all of the new partnerships that we have made with our families and self-advocates that allow me to feel like we are prioritizing the work that we need to prioritize, that we are looking at the right things, we are making changes in the right direction, and that at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? If you can move the
Yes.
needle a little bit each day, then you've been successful. And I am so excited to be in this role and so energized by everyone that I get to go and visit and meet and work with, that I can't help but feel positive and excited. And I hope that our self and family advocates can come along that ride with me.
Yes. Yes. BJ?
I agree completely. And I asked Emily after your interview how she felt it went. And she said it was very refreshing, some of the answers you gave, because she gave me a little preview. And I said, yep, that sounds like Willow. So, because I had to be interviewed right after you. So it was okay. I was glad to follow you. And thank you for your time. You did awesome. See, I told you it wasn't going to hurt.
No, this
Yeah.
one's fun. Thank you so much, guys.
And thank you for coming.
Accessing Life is a podcast produced by the New York State Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, known as OPWDD. The producer is Michael Orzel. Your hosts are Chester Finn and BJ Stasio. To learn more about the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, supports and services, go to opwdd.ny.gov.